This wonderful memoir of yours, which I believe is about to also it's become a bestseller.
Yes.
And I have to tell you something. I was reading it all over my travels, and the country I was in, it's not an easy place to. I mean, you can get very distracted by what's around you, but it kept me fully engaged. And one of the reasons was because it, first of all, your personality, of course, shines through, but also because it was a memoir. It shows your personality, it shows the lessons that you have learned, and it has the personal touch, but at the same time, it's got some incredible commentary on the state of affairs at the moment. So before we get into the book itself, I really want to ask you, what is your large engagement right now? And you have talked about this vision that you have for India and how you've gotten some very bright minds together and you're working within the policy framework for that. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, actually, I do talk about it a bit in my last chapter of the book, where I've said that India is today a service economy. And in electronics also, whatever we are doing today is all services. And therefore, we need to become a product nation. And if we want to be a product nation, we need to do things differently. And I believe strongly that products is where value addition happens. If we just do services, then the services can move from one country to another. And so in electronics, it happened that it moved from the US to Japan, Japan to Korea, Korea to China, China to Vietnam, and now coming to India. So this whole thing of electronics manufacturing that we are doing today is just 4 or 8% value addition. We need to move beyond that. And that's what is the thought behind what should India do in the next 25 years. And if you look at what's happened in India in the last 15, 20 years, we have really become huge in services. And especially if you look at IT services, $260 billion is phenomenal. We are the world's largest. But all these things can get threatened. And also due to new changes happening like Gen AI, a lot of these things will have headwinds. So my thinking with some of my good friends who we all work together is to think, where should India go in the next 25 years? And we believe in every aspect of India. We need to move forward from services to being a product nation. Currently, we are sitting at $2,500 GDP per person. We are a middle income country. Look at Korea, look at Thailand, look at China, they're way beyond us. Thailand, of all the places, much bigger. So if we want to now grow, it's very important that we definitely start to look at product as a way to go.
So, Dr. Chowdhry, you also talk about what is going to be essential in there. And part of that, of course, is skill and capital and policy all coming together in the right manner and the right timing. Okay, so skill, I can, we can talk about skill and capacity building, capital, we can talk about. But I'm very curious to know how policy, what really happens with policy? Because you've been working with policy, you've also had, you've been instrumental in the private sector. Now you're working towards larger macro changes. What really happens? How long should it be? How patient do you have to be? What do you really need for policy to come together?
For policy to come together, you need to socialize your ideas. And you need to go from one end to the other. So for example, for this whole idea of product nation, we have met, I think, more than 150 people in the last 1 year. And we met researchers, we met educationalists, we met founders, we met startups, we met big companies, we met at least 15, 20 top government officials. And with every one of them, we've been socializing this idea that we need to move to being a product nation. And we've been giving 2 examples where we've seen success. Example number 1 is DPI, which is the UPI and India stack and all of that. We've created a global level product. which is now adopted by 11 countries and 33 more countries are going to adopt. So, in addition to that, we've also created a 4G stack, which today is being bought by BSNL, and 13,000 crores worth of order has been placed on Tata's and the company that actually started this whole. So, there are examples of products being successful. And therefore, we now need to therefore keep telling everyone around us that this policy must change. And what is the change in policy we need to bring? We need to do more R&D in this country. And we need to have a completely different look at how public money is used for R&D in private sector. It's never been done in the country. All that we do, public money goes to public sector, public research companies. The results are pretty close to zero.
Okay.
So phenomenal amount of money that has been spent today needs to now be taken to private sector. Private sector does not invest in R&D. That's the problem.
It has been the driver in terms of innovation and somewhat in research as a way. But just to push you further on this point about R&D, what does it actually entail? Is it going to be institutions? What kind of capacity building are we going to actually really need for the R&D to come together? Because concentrate, and for people who have not read the book yet, at some stage I'm going to take a little show of hands on that. It's actually very neatly listed out, but the R&D part is what I'm very curious about seeing.
You see, it's known globally that private sector R&D does not happen unless there are some real incentives put behind it. If you look at the United States, DARPA started it 40 years ago. And they said, you make this product for us. If you make it, we'll give you the money to make it. We'll give you the business and we'll help you scale. All that has happened is that even today, Tesla is given government grants for products they are making today. Do they need the money? No. But the government is actually putting money into private sector. An economist in the UK has actually written a book on this, and she says that public money for private R&D is essential for growth of R&D, growth of innovation. And therefore, this is the formula we need to follow in this country also. We are in this country because of the 3 C's and ED and all of this. The government doesn't put money into private sector, but it can be done. So if you look at startups, SIDBI created a fund of funds, and many of the funds took money from SIDBI and invested into startups. So it's happening, but it's indirect. We now need to do direct as well as indirect.
And you're looking at a timeline of, say, about 20, 25 years for all of this to come to fruition. And time is galloping fast. I mean, look at what's happened in the last 5 years. Even tell me, I mean, you are a person to talk to about that, right?
We have to be, and if we want to remain poor, we can carry on the way we are doing. But if we want to be rich before we get old, we need to do this thing, take this decision differently.
Is there a certain advantage that we have here in 2024 that, say, companies did not have 30 years ago? I mean, I'm going to, of course, get into the scaling that took place in HCL. I mean, I think there was something in the book about how a sales order was initially at 20 crore. By the time you left it, it was, exponentially larger, 2,000 crores. I wonder about where disruption and information figure when it comes to taking the next leap. What is your response to that?
You see, a futurologist whom I have followed for many years, Ray Kurzweil, he, with a guy called Peter Diamandis, set up something called the Singularity University in California. And what do they teach corporates? They teach them one thing. The only way to grow is not linear. It is exponential. So in everything you do, you need to think exponentially. And that's what is required for us to go where we want to go. As I said, if we do not do that way, we will get old before we get rich.
We'll get old before we get rich. I want to just talk about Ray Kurzweil for a minute, because it's thanks to Dr. Chowdhry's book that I actually looked into it. And in the book, he actually talks about when he met him. I think it was when you were meeting Bill Gates. And at that stage, I think this futurist who he called the rock star of futurists, and if Dr. Chowdhry is calling someone that, you can pretty much imagine he's a very smart guy. At that stage, I think he'd written Singularity is Near, and now I think the latest book is called Singularity is Closer or even Nearer. One of the things that Ray Kurzweil talks about is this idea of merging of human intelligence and AI and whatnot. And most of the things actually that he's talked about in the past are very much coming true. And to me, I'm still in that phase where I find it absolutely scary, and I'd rather think it's a movie that we're discussing. But I really want to understand from you, as someone who's followed futurists, who has this fascination with space, how quickly do you think technology is changing? And half the stuff that we thought was science fiction, how quickly do you really think it's all going to be happening or is happening in front of us?
Well, actually, I started reading yesterday.
Yeah.
It's just 2 chapters into that, but it's called Singularity is Nearer with AI.
Yeah.
And what is singularity? Let me just explain that first. It's a physics word, okay? And singularity fundamentally means that at a particular stage, the human intelligence and AI and computing and intelligence will merge. And when it merges, you will be able to increase your intelligence billions of times more than what it is today. Unimaginable. So you take one example. Elon Musk has just planted something in somebody's head, and it's starting to happen. But that's very small piece. That's not what the futurologist I talk about says. He says singularity is going to happen in 2045.
That's around the corner.
He's sticking to that date. And by 2029, he says that the Turing test will be passed. What's a Turing test? Turing test is when computing will be equal to human intelligence. Equal to. So 2029 is just going to happen. And, Ray is sticking to that date even in this book. So these are some things which are really looking like crazy, but they are things that are going to happen. So he also talks about, when I met him, incidentally, when I was going to Bill Gates' home and I met him on the on the boat, he was actually carrying a pudiya in his bag, in his pocket, and he took it out and he says, I have 60 pills a day and I change my blood every weekend. And he talks about how you can live forever. So his concepts of living forever are also amazing. And if you go to YouTube, you'll find a movie called How to Live Forever. And he's written a book called How to Live Forever. So, when I started to think about it, I said, oh God, in the Himalayas, these gurus are hanging around who are living for 150 and 200 years. A lot of people believe 150 is nothing. They do live for 150, 200 years. So, there is this, he talks about how the body is a chemical factory. And if you maintain the chemical balance in the body, you can live forever.
So I think the concept, the idea of living forever and perhaps people doing that in isolation is a completely different debate from where I want to. But this is the problem with talking to Dr. Chowdhry. There's so much that I want to talk about, but I'm going to just bring it back to quantum also. This quantum mission, and now you're going to be chairing you are chairing the mission. And I'll be very honest with you, there's only so much I understand of quantum computing and what quantum capacity means. I understand that one of the threats of not being quantum enabled is that we're going to be far behind when it comes to security and systems. And we're somewhat about, say, 10 years behind, I think, but that's a figure that you talk about. What exactly is it going to mean, and who's really going to have to get their act together for us to be quantum enabled according to the timeline that you see? Yeah.
Classical computing is about 0 and 1, binary. In case of quantum computing, you can be 0 and 1. So fundamentally, what does it mean? It means that it will be in a parallel processing. That means it's phenomenally faster than what you see today. So in certain areas where quantum will be required, will be like, for example, drug discovery. So in these areas, what can be done today in 5 days or 10 days, you can probably do it in 1 second. That's the kind of power quantum will bring. So what are we trying to do in India? We're trying to work on 4 areas in quantum computing. One is creating a quantum computer, making it in India. And that's very exciting because I made pretty much the first classical computer in India. And then secondly, doing quantum communication. And that's really where you talk about quantum security. So you see, today, all the cyber security that is there in our grids, power grids, or on our financial systems can be cracked by a quantum computer in 1 second. So if a quantum computer is sitting in China, whom we don't know where China is on quantum computing, at some stage 2 years later or 3 years later, they can come and bring all our financial systems down. So what do we need to do in the country? We need to become quantum secure. Biden passed a law 2 years ago to say all of the United States must become quantum secure. India has not yet done it. India needs to do and make that happen. So good news is, in India, there are products today available by which you can become quantum secure. And there's a beautiful startup in Bangalore who's now actually marketing its products globally, who has created products which can make us quantum secure. And there's not just one company, there are 4 or 5 other companies. And some of the people in the government are also working on this.
Speaking of startups, Dr. Chowdhry is somebody who is a big believer in startups. I think at some stage there was some count of 50 that you'd invested in. I'm sure that's actually gone up since. You talk about the idea, which is central to your book also, which is aspiration being greater than resources, right? And how important that is. So I'm going to ask a bit of a rude question here also. Where in that balance does delusion fit in? And how do you as a mentor and as someone who's also trying to encourage startups and also, believes in aspiration, how do you manage to navigate, for example, a young leader who's got a great idea for a startup and they've got all the aspiration, resources be ठीक-ठाक hai, but where do you manage to think that something will work and something will not, beyond just, beyond the passion, which is incredibly important?
You see, in my book, I talk about Dr. C.K. Prahlad, who was my guru. And when I went to study under him in Michigan, he said A is greater than R.
Yeah.
So he said that if you have the aspiration, resources will happen. That's exactly the HCL story. We started with 1.86 lakhs, and today we are a $13 billion company globally. 1.86 lakhs is what we started with. If I write about in my book that we had 1.86 lakhs, that time we needed a license to make computers. We didn't have a license. We went to the government, they said, we can't give you a license because you are too small. What did we do? We found a way of doing it. And that is what A is greater than R is all about. So we found that UP government was sitting with a license. We picked up that license. We started a joint sector company. We named our company Hindustan Computers Limited. And with 1.86 lakhs, we had gotten going. And we designed our first computer in India at a time when Apple had just launched its PC in America. So those days, we didn't even know that we are world leaders. But we were. So if we could do it in 1976, why can't we make products today?
I don't know. See, that's the question, right? Because on one hand, I personally feel that with the level of information that's out there and the level of competition that's out there, and perhaps also the amount of liquidity that one sees as well, is it easier now? Is it much easier, or is it much harder because of, I would say, the democratization of chance and opportunity? Is it harder to be the best now?
You see, it's not just the question of the best, but for example, it's much easier for a startup to get going today.
Yeah.
The environment is fantastic. Money is available, mentors are available, institutions are available, all that is available. But to become an Indian leader and then become a global leader is very hard. But we have, as I said, we have established the fact that DPI has become world leader. Zoho is a $1 billion product company today. So it's possible to do. HCL itself used to be a services company. 8-10 years ago, Shiv Nadar, my colleague, said, no, we can't just remain in services, future within products. One of those rare Indian companies that thought in terms of product. Infosys also created a product, TCS also created a product. But HCL took a very different route. We went and bought up $1 billion worth of product business of IBM. And we'll say, we'll recreate those products, old products, and make them new. We will get all those customers. Today, HCL is the largest software product company in the country. $1.4 billion, 18th largest in the world. So it's possible to do. So it's all about having the gumption to take the decision at the right time.
So gumption being a key word, but just while we're talking about HCL, I mean, that is was actually selling to your parents a bike ride, a trip you had to take from Jabalpur to Bhopal, if I'm not mistaken, some 300 kilometers. But the point he brings in the book is that you need to, we're selling all the time. We have to convince people of our idea and our vision and our execution. But I really want you to talk a little bit more about this because it's very important too.
So actually my book has one specific chapter on salesmanship.
Yeah, it does.
And it gives you many examples on why and what and how.
Yeah.
But when we used to hire people in HCL, we used to do a test. And this test was all about checking what is it that they need of that person. So is it the need for achievement? Is it the need for power? Or is it need for affiliation? And we could test this through a theory which was created in Harvard by Professor McClellan. And we used to use that model to actually test each person. So whenever we hired a salesman, we needed to make sure that need for achievement was high. And that's why we succeeded. We had the best sales force in the country. Yesterday, in the evening, we had about 60 of our ex-HCL guys, they all got together here. And they were all sales guys. And we had a reunion. And everybody was giving a story of how they won that contract. So this whole idea of creating a capability of selling is very important in startups. I always tell a CEO of a startup, you must learn how to sell. A lot of them, people think that salesmen are born. It's absolute bullshit. You can learn how to sell. And that is very important.
You never applied for tech jobs. You, in fact, went straight for sales jobs, right? When you first applied. And I think you got 3 wonderful positions, and then you ended up choosing, what you did. But that was also influenced by a book that you read. So tell me a little bit more about how somebody who is inclined towards, I guess, there's a bias that, they're the scientific types, and they're the data guys, and they're the tech guys, and then they're the sales guys, right? You read a book at a very young age, and that influences you. Tell us a little bit more about how that worked.
Well, actually, it was my brother who influenced me a lot, because he first influenced me on the whole habit of reading. And those days, there were no other distractions, unlike today.
Yeah.
So, yes, I got into reading in a very big way. And he would tell me, read this author, read that author, read this author. That's the way we started. And then he started giving, since he was himself from sales and marketing background, he would give me sales and marketing books to read. So I read Kotler very early days. So, all of that influenced me to only apply for sales jobs. I said, I've done my engineering, good enough. If I want to sell an engineering product, I need to be a salesman. That's how it all started. And I used to be very clear that I was not an outgoing guy those days.
I just cannot can anyone imagine that? But anyway, yeah.
I was not an outgoing guy at all. I was very shy, etc., etc. But I learned how to sell, and that changed.
I also want to talk about so reading, of course, is a passion. He has many other interests as well. And in the book, he also outlines that one of the, I think, pinnacles of keeping it together and keeping your mind together is to have varied interests as well. Dr. Chowdhry is quite the singer, actually, and he's pursued music in many ways. And his son is actually now taking it to another level also. How often do you sing? Because you talk about how there was this group that you formed, and in COVID it became something else. It went from Lutf to Zuf, if I'm not mistaken, because of Zoom. And I think they have a pretty serious platform going now. So tell us a little bit about that. And also just your consistency as a person and your passions.
You see, I talk about in my book about being a rangist. And that's very important because you may have a area in which you know everything to the depth. So it's like a tea. You go down very deep, you understand IT very well, you understand electronics very well, but there's a top of the tea also. You need to have multiple interests, and that is very important for you as you developing yourself as a world view person. I did that in IIT Hyderabad. When I started IIT Hyderabad, we created something called fractals. And I told the director, I said, I don't want uh, all these characters who come out of IIT to only know one subject. I don't want them to be nerds. I want them to have a worldview. So we created 36 subjects from which people had to choose. So coming back to music, music was one of those subjects. So I had this great interest in music right through college. I used to sing then, and I sung on the stage. At one stage, in my home, my father was a poet, my sister was a classical singer, and I used to play tabla by my mouth. So I've actually done performances on stage, where I would actually do tabla with my mouth and she would be singing. Now, of course, I've totally forgotten.
Oh, you're saying you have. But don't worry, I'm not going to make it do it.
Singing is something that, during COVID, it became very big because there was nothing else to do. So we used to have these gatherings every month, which was called Lutf. And this group was about 20 odd people. When COVID happened, we decided that instead of meeting once a month, let's meet once a week. And we started gathering people around us. So it was started with 20, 30 people. It grew to 150 people all over the world. Indians from the US, Nairobi, Middle East, everybody comes and sings on our platform.
And can us mere mortals watch you?
Yes, of course. I can give you a link and then you can watch anytime.
Please.
So what we do is that every week we have a theme around which we sing, but we only sing old Bollywood songs. So like next Sunday is the theme for Rajesh Khanna. All of us have actually learned different songs over this period. By some of us have actually hired a teacher who teaches. Like I have had a teacher for the last 6 years, and I get taught every week. I learn a particular song on Wednesday and I sing it on Sunday after practicing at least 8-10 times. So you have to put a lot of energy behind what you're trying to do.
But is everybody like you? I mean, I'm not just only talking about the singing group, because there are these anecdotes in the book which also show that you're a very thorough person in a sense. I mean, we've talked about the business angle, the technology angle, but also now let's get into a little bit of the philanthropy that you've been involved with. And I just want you to talk a little bit about the Nudge Foundation. And of course, in the book you mentioned, having actually gone down on site with the journalists, with other people to see what was happening. But just a little bit about how you delve deep into things and how you actually choose which kind of foundations to associate with. I'd really like to know more about that.
Well, actually, I started out first with the Population Foundation of India. And we were working on women empowerment, which is one of the subjects we like. And in women empowerment, they were at that stage thinking in terms of creating a serial on communicating the whole idea of population right down to every village in the country.
Sure.
And they wanted to create a soap. The whole idea of creating a soap was that we must create something which is edutainment rather than just preaching. So we actually created a soap. And when they were creating the soap, they called me in and said, can you tell us what else we can do with it? So I said, why don't you take it to radio? So they took it to radio. They were doing it only on Doordarshan. And then I said, take it to social media. I'm talking 10 years ago. Social media was still early days, but we started social media then. Today, and when we actually did 3 different seasons with more than 180 episodes, please go and watch it on YouTube. It's called Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti Hu. And that's what is women empowerment. Main kuch bhi kar sakti. And it's been very successful. It was created by Feroz Abbas Khan, the famous Feroz Abbas Khan who created Mughal-e-Azam recently on stage.
Wow.
So he has done an outstanding job. And we've actually carried that momentum. Now it is all happening on social media. We actually have voice bot now, and you can go and ask questions about any issues on women empowerment. So the same thing is true for Nudge Institute in Bangalore. Why did I want to get into Nudge Institute? Because I felt that poverty is such a big issue in this country. And Nudge Institute made this statement that in 25 years we must remove poverty in this country. So I said, okay, I will participate in that. And so I went to see what programs they were doing. And I went to villages in Jharkhand. And I went to a village which is just, around the whole, Maoist area also. Very, very difficult place to go to. But I went there to see how it was being implemented. It was gave me so much happiness that I had invested in this organization.
I mean, you actually spoke to someone who I think went from having absolutely nothing to, I think you asked them, what do you have in your bank account? And the lady said, I now have 20,000 or something, yes, which is a massive leap which took place. Yeah. So, I mean, the idea of poverty alleviation is huge, yeah, right? But I'm very curious to know how quickly philanthropy scales up and reaches. I mean, what has your experience been? Because we have seen more interest in it in the last 10 years in India, but what do you feel as someone in your position about what institutions can do, and away from spreading awareness in terms of actually just really getting to the crux of enabling others?
The first thing I believe in philanthropy, don't just write a check. If you are actually giving somebody money, work together with them.
Right.
Help them, take them where they need to go. So whether it's Nudge Institute, whether it's Save Life Foundation, whether it's Population Foundation, whoever I work with, I don't just give money. I give money every year. But I go and work together with them on areas where they need help. And that is very important. So Nudge Institute, I took them to a couple of states, and I took them to meet some people in the central government, and now they're flying. They have phenomenal amount of support coming in. You'll be surprised, on an average, they add a founder a day.
Wow.
When I started with them 3 years ago, they had, I think, 20 founders, 30 founders. Now they're adding so many founders a day because everybody is now willing to put money into such an important cause. Because we are talking about people who have nothing. When you go to these villages, I mean, they have really nothing. And they start from there and they come to a stage of having 20,000 rupees in their bank account.
Right.
And I saw that development. And that whole model, can you imagine, came from Bangladesh. It's called the BRACS model.
Yeah.
And around the BRACS model, they teach you how to be self-sufficient in 3 years.
I'm going to come back to the book. Sorry, just a quick show of hands. Not who has read the book, but just give me an idea as to, and it'll be exciting either way, who has actually read Just Aspire. So I have to be a little careful about the spoilers here, but I am also in a position where I'm, given this opportunity to ask you questions, so I'm going to ask them anyway. Writing a book, especially...
But after today, everybody should buy the book.
By the way, I'm very excited that no one's put up their hand. We are going to be shutting that main door and you cannot leave till you've bought it, okay? Yeah, we've got it all planned out with the Quorum. But what I want to also understand is, the chapters, when you get into the book, as I said, they start, there's about the family, then there's the wonder years in Jabalpur, there's the growing up, then there's the, association with DCM and so on and so forth. And you talk about everything from your family and other humans, and also to your affiliation with dogs, with people. I mean, it's really, there's affection in the book as well as technical talk, and I love the way you've interspersed it. What was the hardest chapter? What were the hardest chapters for you to write?
None.
Acha. So you just got there and just started.
You see,
because writing is very disciplined.
I want to tell you one thing. This book, when I started out, I created a team, and I wanted somebody to do deep research also. I didn't want to write anything which was incorrect. So I had a lot of help. But one thing that we did was that I wanted this book to not read like another autobiography.
Because it doesn't, actually.
I picked up 10 autobiographies and they were very, very boring.
I'm telling you, it's not boring.
Top authors in this country, I mean, I was recommended by the people who actually published this book. Read this book. Read this book. Read this book. You must understand how autobiographies are written. And I read them, and I said, that's damn boring. So I said, this book must read like fiction. And I tell you, this is the response I've received from everyone who's read it, that it flows so quickly that you can read it in one sitting. A friend of mine finished it in 4 hours. He's a fast reader.
But so are you.
But amazing. So this is really how we wanted to create this book, and this book is like that. It is a lot of fun, and there's a lot of anecdotes here.
Exactly, and also the titles, for example, I mean, you have, Jabalpur, the Wonder Years, the Techno Dreamers, the Eyes of William Henry Gates III, and other encounters. So what I'm trying to see is that it's really interesting how you've put all of this together. Obviously, I'm going to ask you if you're planning on writing something else on the vision that you have going forward, or you're a very busy person, so I don't know. That's an appropriate question.
Well, actually, if the thought that we have created of making India a product nation sort of starts to really crystallize in the next 6 to 12 months, then maybe a couple of us might get together and write about it, how we created it and how we made it happen. But that's still in the future. But I've enjoyed writing what I did, and of course I've described some very interesting things when I went to China, for example.
China, you just recently made a very interesting statement, I think. I mean, you said it earlier, but it was quoted in the press just a few days ago about how basically, something about how basically China's got all our data, or will have it, because of the way the chips are going back to them. Can you actually talk about that a little bit? And I'm assuming that's a cautionary note that you've spoken about. China seems to be, and always has been, very advanced and aggressive in its way forward with technology. How worried should we be about how vulnerable we are towards their reach for our data?
I can be quite controversial here.
That's great.
Okay, so
the first time we're doing that today.
So China is attacking us at Galwan. We are fist fighting with China there, right? All of us have seen those videos.
Yes.
Disaster. And then we are the largest importing country from China today. Last 3-4 years, our imports have dramatically increased. And this is an absolute disaster, because this is how East India Company came to India. They came for trading and started running the country. Are we going to let that happen to China?
You think that's the kind of level of
we are actually sold to China in every manner that you can think of.
Quite dependent.
Because every product that you buy has a Chinese piece inside.
And that stuff is going back here.
That stuff is going back. 6 months ago, there was a investigation into Modi ji. When he came around in the beginning, said all fellows must come on time in the central government office. So he installed these attendance machines. These attendance machines were having Chinese chips. All the data went back. And 6 months ago, the government investigation agencies are actually looking at it. You look at the whole idea today, if China wants information in India, it has everything. All our streets are actually looked at morning till evening by Chinese CCTV cameras. Hey, that's very dangerous. So this is something that I've been trying to tell the government, that be very careful, that we are allowing China to get inside us totally. And therefore, we now need to prepare our country to be self-sufficient, and we need to replace all those Chinese products with Indian products.
I don't know how useful this question is, but isn't the world allowing China to get into, I mean, the world itself has become so dependent on Chinese products. And of course, I don't know if one should take comfort in the fact that everybody is in as much trouble.
But but we are in a different state. China is our border, and they are attacking us all the time. They are not attacking China, the United States. How does it matter to them?
So how seriously does the government take these kind of
Very seriously. On CCTV, they've already issued an edict that no Chinese CCTVs will be allowed to be imported.
Okay.
On drones, they've said no Chinese drones will be allowed to be imported. So slowly these things are happening, but people are not going down to the chip level. So every phone that is floating around in this room has a Chinese chip. Very dangerous situation. Can you imagine all of our armed forces and army, navy, everybody's carrying phones which have Chinese chips in them.
And that is, of course, something that one is going to have to work upon.
But let me come back to China.
Yeah.
In my book.
Yeah.
I went to China in the early days of China, when it was not developed. So I used to sell products and system integration to China. And we won a lot of contracts there. But it is pretty much 100% government. Everything is government there. You may think it's a private company, it's a government. So what happened there was that one of my customers said, I want to come and have a discussion in your room, in the hotel room. And those hotels were terrible there. We had only one hotel called Friendship. So these 4 fellows landed up in my room. And they were discussing with me and my colleague. Suddenly one guy gets up and goes away. He comes back. Second guy gets up and goes away, comes back. Third guy gets up and goes away, comes back. Fourth guy does the same. So we finished the meeting in about an hour and a half. So they went away. And I asked my colleague, what were these guys doing? They were getting up and going away again and again.
Negotiation.
No, they were having a shower in my bathroom.
Oh yeah. This is in the book, by the way. They were super excited about the shower.
They had only communal baths in China.
That's so funny.
And then I had to change my room because I really didn't want to go to that bathroom at all.
And that's hilarious. I know. But you also, I think that's why you also talk about the negotiation strategies that took place and the pressure tactics that took place also, and how you raise the price of the product. Yes. Right?
We left an Indian behind there. In their minds.
Deet.
Indians can also be damn smart. If you're smart, we are smarter.
Yeah. Well, for a minute, just before I do that, I just want to say something. I just want your opinion on something. I've been hearing a lot about Hyderabad itself and where it is now, and we're actually sitting in Knowledge City, so to speak, and how it's developed over time. What do you think Hyderabad's doing right, and how do you see it progressing in the next 10 years in terms of its significance for IT and for human capital in the country?
See, Hyderabad has developed brilliantly with 2 areas, genomics, Telangana developed genomics and IT. Now, I think Hyderabad and Telangana needs to go beyond IT, and that's what I talked about earlier. How Hyderabad needs to identify for Telangana needs to identify. Actually, Telangana is Hyderabad, Hyderabad is Telangana. There's no other big city out here. So, fundamentally, we need to now create the next areas for growth. And those are things that the state government must identify and go beyond IT very quickly. And that opportunity exists because we have the human capital in this city. All of Andhra's young people have actually moved to Hyderabad. Yeah. Whether you are in Telangana or Andhra, everybody's in Hyderabad. So I think you have all the skills that are there, and therefore you can create products, you can create industries, you can do something much, much bigger than what we are doing today. So this is a great opportunity for Hyderabad to be very, very successful.
And on that note, I'm going to actually open it up to the audience. Dr. Chowdhry, big applause for you for just being wonderful in person, and of course for anyone who's not read the book, which is everybody in this room who we're going to lock up until you actually take the book. Please, it's actually really, really great fun to read, and it's very informative. I would like to open the floor to you now. Please just do me a favor, introduce yourself very briefly, and if you could keep your questions short so everyone has a chance, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for sparing your time and inspiring us to ask time. If I look at when you start your career, 1976 or so in HCL to 2012, India has transformed. I think the first $1 trillion economy became, and you have contributed to HCL. Thanks to you, and big round of applause to you for us to become $1 trillion economy. As we say next decade belongs to India. And then we'll also be, $7 trillion developed economy somewhere in 2030. That's what the estimate says. What kind of India that you see in the next 1 decade? Because you have the advantage of your point of seeing India transforming from where it was to where it is. And if you extrapolate based on your experience and knowledge, How do you see the kind of India that one could see after 10 years?
So you see, I've been observing the whole growth of the IT and tech industry in the country, and all of us have been seeing that. It's been exceedingly successful. In addition to, inside that 260 billion of software exports, is sitting a figure of 39 billion, which is hidden, which is called ER&D exports, engineering and R&D exports. 39 billion is actually a transfer price. It is the value of most of the people who work in GCCs. But you actually take the real value, it's 100 billion. Now that's our capability in engineering and R&D. That capability we are not utilizing today. That's what I believe we should utilize in the next 10, 20 years, because that capability positions us much higher than a lot of countries in the world. And we have the demographic dividend as well. So I think we must take advantage of these skills that we possess to create a country and go at a pace that I talked about. How instead of going linear, we should go exponential. And that can be achieved by doing and using our skills and our capability much, much better than what we have done. And that is what I see as an India of tomorrow, where we use our capabilities. And today we are known as the software capital of the world. I would like to see us being called the drone capital of the world, the space capital of the world, the electronics capital of the world, blah, blah, blah. That is where we need to go, and it's possible to do because now we have references. We have a DPI, we have a 4G, we have a software capability, and our brand India has been created by our engineers and software people and administrators all over. And why are our Indians so successful as CEOs globally? Has anybody realized why that is true? The real reason is that we are multicultural from the day we are born. We manage multicultural every day. And that makes us better placed to be world leaders. And that's where we should be.
I'm Krishna. Thank you for socializing the ideas and learnings, lifelong learnings you had in the industry. I appreciate your group area interest in the development of our country, industry, especially the hardware industry, product industry. With your socialization and all, what are the specific initiatives you expect from the government? Obviously, just now we discussed about how governments of various countries are encouraging the local industry, US, Europe, China. They are putting a lot of bags in high-tech products. Of course, India is capable of doing both software products, but hardware products are much more tougher in the given context. What do you think that specific initiatives or specific things that are going to come from government of India? For example, a small note. We used to have an R&D credit for the local industry, which they removed for 5 years back totally. 150% or 200%. Once you recognize the ASR, they removed it. Of course, they reduced the income tax subsequently. Like that, you expect now the budget is also coming on 24th around that. You expect any initiatives now, any things from the government of India?
So from my foundation called EPIC, which was created with a vision to make India a hardware product nation, I managed to get two things done. One, get a task force set up for creating products in India. And two, making a bill happen for right to repair. So these two things we've been working on. Managed to get a task force set up. This task force has just submitted its report. We have said that Indian government must put 42,000 crores behind creating an India as a product nation. If it gets adopted, we'll all have many Indian products replacing Chinese products. And I think that is possible because, as I said, we have the skills to do it. So this is something that the government, I'm sure, will look at because the current model that they have for this is not working. It's broken. And we need to therefore bring this R&D capability. And as I said earlier, public money into private is what is needed.
Thank you for today's session, both of you. I think there were a lot of insights that we gained. Just wanted to take that point that you just mentioned about public money in the private sector, which is happening in other countries. In your opinion, how soon do you think it will happen here?
Good question. That's what I said when I was said socializing. So, we've been at it for close to a year and a half now. Bunch of us got together and said, let's form a think tank. And we must now write a paper on how India's economy and direction for economy must change. So we've done a lot of socializing. We've actually had 2 offsites. We've met close to about 150 people in the last one and a half years. We met ministers, we met secretaries to the government, we met state governments. We have socialized it like hell. And we sort of got a glimmer of hope when the interim budget was announced. And this glimmer of hope was 1 lakh crore will be provided for R&D into the country. Now, whether it happened because of our socializing or not, I don't know. But in addition to that, the BJP wrote in its manifesto that India must become a product nation. So somewhere our socializing is working, and I hope it finally gets it to a stage where genuinely the government puts money, public money, into private. And if America can do it to Tesla, I mean, India should be doing it to everybody that we should be doing it for. And the public money into public is not delivering results. If you look at CSIR budget, out of the total budget of CSIR, what is left at the end of the year is 400 crores. The rest of the money goes into salaries. What R&D are we going to do with 400 crores? So this is where we are today. We need to move on.
Namaskar, sir. It's a very great opportunity for us to be here with you, because what you have achieved as an Indian, it gives us a lot of inspiration and hope. And so it's really difficult to choose one question because we want to value your time. So I would like to ask you, I'm asking you this question because of your standing today. So we are hearing about de-dollarization, decoupling from the dollars, and this scenario, day by day, it looks like it's gonna happen very soon. So can you please talk about this for some time?
It's not my area of expertise, but I'll give it a shot. There's so much around it that's happening all over the world, and the Chinese are reasonably successful going there. This new thing that happened, which is Saudi Arabia taking that decision of decoupling with the United States, has really set the ball rolling. And it will also depend on how the United States selects its next president. Trump is a no-brainer anymore after that shot that got fired. That
No
shot.
pun intended.
When it happened to Reagan, he won every state except one. So it's going to happen all over again. So this is where all of this is going to happen. And one interesting phenomena which my son taught me, my elder son is he's a crypto freak. And crypto is another new asset class that's emerging all over the world. And he goes all over the world talking about why people must invest in crypto. Because he's himself invested in crypto. And he's taken all my money which was lying around, he's invested in crypto. I don't know what the hell's going to happen.
And you can't even say anything about it because, it's technology based. So.
But, these are all interesting things that are happening. And crypto is something that I believe India should open up. Yeah. Why are we, all these things we should do. A current account convertibility. Why are we keeping back? We've got enough, reserves today. So these changes must occur, and all of these will have some decoupling with the dollar at some stage. Some of these things that will happen. I mean, this is all I can say. I'm not an economist.
Do you think BRICS will play a major role?
BRICS is a lost cause.
We're just going to take a few more questions also. Chaitanya, just give me an idea as to where we are on time. We are good. But I think I saw a gentleman asking for the mic back there. And please do introduce yourself and when you ask the question. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. My name is Praveen Rao, and I started my career with HCL, so that's the only thing which I want to highlight first.
You did well.
Yes. So,
and he's been following him consistently.
That's a separate story. I cannot pull those strings here. A curious thing which I was thinking around from the morning, that now government has opened up to reduce the dependency from the outside world. We are trying to build more and more things inside, especially in lot of government tenders. When I see this chip war, like when I started my career in HCL, it was Intel AMD. Now you see a lot of things. You have ARM, you have Qualcomm. There are so many others. So what is just a small comment I want to understand, because you are on the other side of the table now, that in the upcoming days, whether you see actual chip making in India, specifically comparable to the product which Intel and AMDs and Qualcomms of the world are making, and will we be seeing all those things in the Indian opportunities or the major tech refresh tenders which keeps on coming? So specifically in chip making, I think we are lacking behind.
Well, actually, my dream is that India should have an NVIDIA in 25 years from now.
Exactly.
That's my dream. And therefore, when I went after making this India as a product nation and getting this task force set up, we actually identified 30 chips that we should make in India and 44 chips we should make in India and 30 products that we should make in India. And that's been our recommendation to the government. So, capability-wise, is there any doubt that we can do it? I don't think so. It's a question of taking the risk to do it. And that is what is essential. And if we are able to take that risk, we bet on our people, we bet on our capability, I'm sure we can do it. I met a startup about 4 weeks ago, and this chap used to work in Qualcomm. So he came to me and said, look, I want to create a modem chip like what Qualcomm makes. So I said, how will you succeed against Qualcomm? He says, they make it for $12.50, I'll make it for $2. And I'll make it better than Qualcomm.
Okay.
I've worked in Qualcomm. I know what the problems are. So I'm actually, from my IN fund, I'm actually going to fund them. And as a matter of fact, DOT is looking at giving them money to make that chip. So these things are starting to happen. It's still very early days. You're seeing green shoots, and that's all they are today. But that's where we are.
I'm just going to quickly just add to your question, because I'm curious about this. NVIDIA is a company that I think everybody's just been fascinated by, and of course its relevance into the future. Fine, even if we give ourselves like 20 years to have a company like that, where does the people and the skilling come into all of this? I always worry about this part. I don't worry about the technology, I don't worry about the capital, I don't worry about the land and the policy. I worry about the skilling and the people.
Do you know something? All the top chips of AMD, Intel, NVIDIA, Broadcom, Qualcomm are designed in India already. Except that we don't get the IP for it. We don't get the profits from it.
Oof.
All that we are doing to GCCs is giving them people.
Okay.
And all we are getting is income tax from those people.
Okay.
500,000 people are employed by GCCs today. And a lot of these chip companies are designing their products in India. One of the biggest chips of Intel was actually pretty much designed in India. So the capability exists. It's just that we haven't put our minds to doing this, and we haven't put the government's might on doing things, and we have not given government business to these people. We must do all that.
So it has to be funneled in the right way.
Yes, it has to be very clearly focused.
Any more questions?
Hello. Hi, I'm Aditya.
Hi.
So, I'm from a manufacturing family, and it's been a year since I joined my business. And I've been looking at sales and marketing for the past 8 months. And so I just, more than a question, it's an advice. I've been trying to, get cracks on deals, but I'm not able to. And in India, it's just a lot of cutthroat prices. People slash prices constantly. And what can I do different from my competitors so that I can get the deal and get it? Because I'm trying to think a lot about what can I do different, what can my business do different, but it's not really helping.
Hire an ex-HCL salesman.
Ex-HCL.
Hire an ex-HCL salesman. You'll succeed. I met 40, 50 of them last night. They're all brilliant. And then one of them is sitting here also. So, it's not about the product. It's not about what you have available. Yes, it's important. But what is more important is how you are able to create a relationship with the customer. And you need to learn that to happen. So your business, I don't know whether it's a B2B business or a B2C business. Is it B2B business?
It's a B2B business.
B2B business is all about relationships. And you have to have salespeople who can really sell for you. I write in my book that the first product which we sold in this country when we didn't even have a product. We sold it on a brochure. So it's all about salesmanship. So that is one part. The second part is make sure that your product has differentiation. Differentiation is very important, okay? And I learned something from a Swedish professor. He used to say, some products you can't have differentiation, but you can create differentiation every 6 months. And it's called, what is called temporary monopoly. Okay. So temporarily you have a monopoly. And then every time you create a new version of that product, you keep on doing something similar. So think like that.
But fundamentally, does your product always have to address a gap in the market? Does it always have to address a gap in the market? Is that something a successful product has to have, or is that
not necessary?
Not necessary.
Because you see, it depends on the size of the market.
Right.
If the market size is huge, then there can be 6 players also. It doesn't matter.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
We have a couple of
Last question.
To be fair, last two. I saw them go up at the same time.
I'll take 2 questions.
No, you have to share them. One for you and one for someone else. Sorry. I can see.
My name is Raj. I'm a lawyer in the crypto blockchain space. Yeah. I said it just because you talked about it. And thank you very much for the enlightenment, and thank you, Fatima, for moderating so well. So I actually have 2 questions, is it okay?
I'm not going to argue with the lawyer. Please.
Yeah, Dr. Chowdhry, you mentioned about China in a CCTV. And you said the steps being taken right now are that the Indian government has banned import of Chinese CCTVs. But would that be enough? What about all the existing CCTVs in the country?
Brilliant question. So, if I was Biden in America, I would say rip them apart and put them new ones. Okay. But then I went to a startup who's created a quantum chip. And this startup says that if you give me an opportunity, I'll go and plant it in all the networks that are there today, and I'll make them secure. So there is a solution outside that as well.
Great. My second question, again, a very short one. Evidently, you're a voracious reader. If you were to pick one book that inspired you the most, what is it in your?
I'll always say Ray Kurzweil. He is my most favorite guy because, I've learned so much reading his books. Okay. Every time I read one page, I get to know more. And the way he describes technology is so easy to understand. So do read Ray Kurzweil. He's written about 15 odd books.
And he's
quite amazing.
He's all over the news right now because of his latest book, actually, which is one we were just discussing. It's like 3 days ago there have been interviews, right? For him.
I'll make a note of it. Thank you so much. Here, there is this gentleman has been wanting.
Come on, we can't have one after the other. Yeah,
please
go ahead.
give him a mic. Yeah. He's been wanting.
And also,
my name is Ramesh Tatla. I think we had a very interesting discussion. You talked about products. So we have been a product company for the last 65 years. And why we were able to sustain is because we were able to bring in the differentiation. Yes, the chips we have to import, we have no choice. But our products contain more than chips. So the important aspect which you talked about is, you said product R&D and innovation. I remember DSIR 30 years back, they came out with a scheme directly to fund private organizations. Very innovative scheme, but unfortunately, after 1 year, some babus interfered and shut it down. So I 100% agree with you that direct funding to industry should come, private industry. And the challenge is what we see is, you talked about China. China, we are importing $100 billion worth of imports from China. 30 billion is electronics. And for small industry, Government of India created the GEM portal. And majority of products are Chinese, stamped as made in India. And government doesn't want to take any decision on that because they say it's the end user who has to take the decision whether he wants to buy or not. So the attitudes have not changed last 30 years. I remember we both of us worked with the then Andhra Pradesh government with Chandrababu Naidu on hardware policy and all that. I have not seen a major differentiation between that time and this time in the last 30 years. You talked about PLI, who is benefiting out of PLI? The large multinationals. How many Indian companies have benefited out of PLI? And you talk about defense. Till today, defense most of the companies working with defense are making only modules or part of the equipment. Nobody is making a full product. And you talked about the Indian CEOs in US and all that because they're multicultural. But how many are multidisciplinary? You talk about engineering. I have to design a product. My product involves about 7 or 8 engineering degrees, including basic science. Where is it taught? It's still not taught in India. I developed a product, Indian product, but where is the merit for an Indian product? So these are some of the challenges which government doesn't...
Hey, don't talk anymore, I'll get very depressed. So I understand your pain, where it's coming from, because you've been in this business for so long.
I've been working with startups also because I was very much interested that we have to work with startups. But the problem with startups also is the deep domain doesn't exist. Even though a lot of investors nowadays say deep tech, deep tech, deep tech. I'm discussing related to electronics and hardware. I'm not talking about the IT side. So the deep tech, where is deep tech? So these are all the missing links which government has to more look into those things rather than telling that I'll find this, on that, you bring in phones, bring in that and all that. So
no, you have some very, very valid points here. And I ran a manufacturing unit for a very long time, 30 odd years. And it was absolutely a pain to run a manufacturing unit. And the gentleman at the back will also agree with me. Running manufacturing in India is a pain. But then you have to take that pain because there's no choice. You have to succeed whatever you want to do. So GEM, for example, I have now brought it to the attention of a couple of board members of GEM. This whole point that you're making, that everything is branded as Indian, but it's actually Chinese. It's been brought to their attention. It was taken up in the last board meeting, which I'm told. Secondly, the serious corruption in GEM. That has also been talked about. GEM is not just the way it is today. It is actually gamed by certain companies, global companies, who know how to game it. Even that has been brought to the attention of the government. Recently, I believe a paper is doing the rounds within the government from one of the government think tanks that GEM needs to be relooked. So hopefully something will happen there. But you are right about a lot of these issues which we need to settle. But one of the biggest challenges in this country is what I call the regulatory cholesterol. Okay, is the regulatory cholesterol we need to remove. We need to find the right statins for it. And this is something that our think tank is also very seriously working on, creating a paper. Like we've actually created a paper which is running into about 15 odd pages, 20 pages, which is on ease of doing business. This whole nonsense that I see in the country, ease of doing business, number 5 rank, number 4 rank, we get carried away with our own IPO. This is all nonsense. We don't have ease of doing business. I've talked to investors from Taiwan and they say, guys, you first create ease of doing business, then we'll come. They don't want to come. So, these are all cholesterol that are floating around in regulatory issues. We need to clean them up one after the other. And in our group, we have actually formed a regulatory group that is looking at each piece of regulation. And we want to get that correct. It might take us 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, doesn't matter. We have the patience to get it done. We must get it done. Because if regulatory part we don't correct, two very critical issues, three critical issues: public money into R&D, private R&D, regulation, and demand aggregation. Demand aggregation means that government business must be given to Indian companies. That's how DARPA created global giants. If we don't do that, we are not going to succeed. Look at Korea. They took a very clear decision that 5 chai balls will be given all the business. Simple. Samsung CEO was put behind bars for bribery and corruption. He was bribing the president of the country. He was pardoned because they didn't want Samsung to not succeed. And the people, all Koreans, voted for it. They said, no, pardon him, doesn't matter, he can bribe. Let him succeed. Can this happen in India? So this is really what I'm talking about. Yeah. How do you encourage global companies out of the country is very important. Whichever way we want to do, we must do it. I'm not saying follow the Korean model at all.
No, but especially at a time, I think, when we're also looking at some of the balance that...
Become a product nation, right? How much do us as Indians need to understand or accept capitalism or get aligned with capitalism?
Sorry?
Capitalism.
Yeah, because we somehow have socialist roots. When you look back at our culture, culturally, where do you see, because a lot of youth as well don't look up to gaining wealth or creating wealth. Where do you really see that angle of pushing or accepting capitalism, of more and more people trying to go towards building products at scale?
Narayan Murthy said this 30 years ago. He said, we need to be capitalists. There should be no doubt about it. We must make wealth. There's no doubt about it. So we need to be really clear in our minds that this whole socialist bullshit should go away from our minds. We have to be capitalists. Yes, I'm very clear
I thought
about
it had actually such a pleasant question. I mean, it's surprised by the question actually.
Yeah, that's what I'm very surprised because don't worry about this at all.
Yeah.
This is something that is being recognized in this country. Today, people listen to people like Anand Mahindra. Why do they listen to people like Anand Mahindra? Why do they listen to Uday Kotak? They're all making huge wealth, they're all capitalists. People listen to them. They are their role models today. Largest following on Twitter is Anand Mahindra. Am I right?
Yeah.
After Narendra Modi. So, it's happening. Don't worry. We must make wealth. If we don't make wealth, we will not create a country.
All right. On that wonderful note, and of course we can carry this forward. I hope your fans get a chance to talk to you a little bit more after this. And of course the book is there. I'm going to just thank this wonderful audience for having been the audience that you are, and for the questions, and of course Dr. Chowdhry for having made time for us today. It's been wonderful talking to you. And of course, the Quorum Hyderabad for having both of us here. So thank you very, very much, and a big round of applause to all of us. Thank you.
This is my third Quorum appearance. I must tell everybody here, I first went to Mumbai, and it was a stand-up crowd. There was no room in that place. You have a small place there in Bombay, but there was only standing room. And I had Govindraj Athiraj interviewing me, and then I went to Gurgaon, and the same thing happened. And here you are just launching Quorum, so I'm sure next time I come here, there'll be standing room. But thank you so much for calling me here.
Thank you.